Well, Wendie, thank you so much for being here on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. We are going to talk about some great stuff today, and particularly how to maintain, or really some tips on to maintain wellness as a busy entrepreneur. And we know that that is so important, but that's one of those things we kind of put on the back end. We don't really talk about it a lot. Before we get into that, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, I'm Wendie Veloz. I go by Wendie V, and I am the founder of wellnessgrind.com. I am a female entrepreneur, and I'm actually in the beginning of my journey. So I just launched in September of last year. So I'm still feeling my way through all of the different things. And one of the things I have to do is maintain my own wellness. Otherwise, I won't get anything done. So I'm actually an expert in mental health. I've worked in the mental health field for about almost 15 years now. Everything from client kind of interactions to systems planning. And so I do more macro level mental health work. And I decided I was going to teach spin classes a couple years ago. I love spin. I thought it was a great exercise form. And I really wanted to make sure that I could maintain my own exercise and my busy schedule. So one way to do that was to start teaching. And then I decided I liked the money from that. So then that kind of benefited me in another way. And I wanted to find somewhere to put all of my spin workouts. And so I just created a blog. And then I realized that I could actually monetize that. And so I moved it from WordPress.com to WordPress.org, which was a whole adventure in itself. And when I did that, I realized that, I really needed to do all these other pieces with it. And so for a while, I struggled to maintain my own wellness. And now I think I'm finally getting in the groove of maintaining all of it together as an entrepreneur. And so that's why I'm super excited to talk to you today about, this topic, because it's so important.
Yes, no, and thank you so much for being here and discussing it. Like I said, this is one of those kind of things that we put on the back foot. We're not thinking about it a lot. We're only focusing on where we want to go, on growing our business, but we sometimes forget to also look after ourselves, because let's face it, if you're not there anymore, your business can't run. And particularly if you're a personal brand and if you're kind of like the focus of the business and of the company. So wellness is obviously very, very important. Now, from your experience, obviously you've just started this whole entrepreneurial world since last year, September, and congratulations, by the way, for taking that step. But from your experience, obviously you've started meeting other people and you started working with some people as well. And you kind of see the benefit of people just concentrating more on their wellness. Do you have a couple of examples like that where you can see people have actually had this like epiphany moment where they go, oh my gosh, I need to look after myself?
Oh my gosh, I have a great one that just happened. Another fellow entrepreneur who I've been helping establish her website, because now that I know how to build websites, I'm like the guru of it for all my friends. And so she came to me and said, I need to get out of the place I'm working. It's really toxic, and I just don't feel right when I go home, and I can't maintain my relationship and all the other things that I want to do. And I have a product that I want to put out. I want to put out an e-course. And I can't do the e-course when I'm doing this job. And so just yesterday was her last day at this toxic job. I saw her walking out with a cake, and she is going full force on her business. And she decided that because she's been saving, she's actually in the financial wellness space. So more in the kind of finance and financial independence pieces of her sector. So she has been saving enough to just take some time off, develop her e-course, finish the website that we started, and go full force. And she's doing it because of her mental well-being. I mean, there's no other excuse for it. And so to me, I'm like, wow, that is so freeing of an example. And then I think just for me as well, I've had so many different relationships and dating things that have been really toxic too. And so I think sometimes people come to the wellness piece because of an experience that was sort of toxic and traumatizing. And so, at least in my personal story, I got really sick after a breakup in 2016, and I ended up in the hospital. And it was really bad. I mean, doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me. And the only thing they could figure out was that it was my mental wellness was not in check. And so they released me and said, go get some counseling and sort it out. And after that was really where I came to understanding all the different dimensions of wellness and committed myself to my journey. And then from there, the spitting and all this other stuff started kind of coming out of that. And so now it's been about almost 5 years later, and here I am teaching other people.
That's
So,
amazing.
you can come from any sort of aspect of your life being unhealthy or unwell and come to this conclusion. And really, it's going to take years to get yourself back on track. It's not like an instantaneous thing. And you have to be mindful about it. And I think that's the thing that people don't understand. They think, go to the gym and I'm suddenly living a life of wellness, eat some diet that I saw online and suddenly I'm eating perfectly and I'm going to be well in all the aspects of my life. And that's just kind of not how it works. And so I think that's one of the things that my goal is to really help people understand the intricacies and the complexities of it, but to simplify that so people
Yes.
feel like it's attainable.
Yes. Now, let's go over and talk about, wellness as a busy entrepreneur, because this is something that, oh my goodness, I'm so passionate about, but I'm not the expert, which is why I'm so happy to have you here. But
Yeah.
let's talk about wellness as general. What is it really? And where's the
Yeah.
misconception sometimes?
Yeah. So, I mentioned, working out and eating, and that seems to be one of the easiest things for people to contextualize in their life. So they go straight to that. And that's just like one aspect of your physical wellness. And so physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, occupational well-being, intellectual well-being, spiritual well-being, financial well-being, community well-being, and your environmental well-being. So all of those are the dimensions of wellness. And altogether, it definitely is a model that can be overwhelming, but there's a lot of different research that shows that you need to think about all these different aspects. And it's not just like, okay, I have my budget in place, so now I'm like done with financial well-being. Well, there's so many layers to just that dimension. And so you really have to find people who are doing the different dimensions the way you think you can handle it in a way, and follow those people, find those resources and look for those things. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do, is connect people to the best resources for each of those dimensions and give them personal stories. Like, how did this person get over whatever their crisis was? And how many different dimensions did they touch on in that journey?
Yeah.
And you're not going to always need to do all of them at once. And sometimes you're going to be super in depth on one of them. If you really need some sort of mental health service, you might need something telemedicine wise, but you also may at some point need something more intensive that's longer lasting and requires medication. And so at the same time, we know that for mental health issues, social connections are super important. So you might also then need to boost up your social connections as well, just to keep your mental well-being in check. And so there's kind of this interplay, dovetailing that happens all the time. And when we're flowing through life so fast, you don't realize all of those connections. And so one thing that's helpful is to slow down and to make meaningful points of connection between the different dimensions. And that's one thing that I learned in my own experience. I tend to just go, especially as an entrepreneur. You've got like a to-do list a mile long, and then you're suddenly like, I don't have time to just sit in a bath and relax for like an hour. Like, who said that that's even a to-do thing on my list? Why is it? But the amount of mental clarity you will get might actually promote your creativity after you do that. So you kind of have to spend the time to think about what are those things that you do that promote your well-being in all these different dimensions. And I call that your wellness recipe. So for example, my wellness recipe is different from yours. You live in a completely different place with completely different resources and a completely different lifestyle. And, you like different things than I do. And so it's really going to be up to each of us to see, like, this is my wellness recipe and this is what works for me. And I also don't know about these other things that seem kind of exciting. Let me dabble in them and see if I can bring them into my recipe. Where is the space I can carve out for those activities, and how much time will they take? And am I willing to dedicate the time and the money to do that? And so a lot of this is about, your financial aspects, and people sometimes are paying tons of money to go to a gym or to, do a fad diet or to have meal prep come to their house. But then there's some simple things that you can also do that are a lot cheaper and promote a different aspect of your well-being. So it can be done at any price point. Wellness is not something you have to like invest a ton of money in, but you do have to invest the time. And I think that's what becomes difficult for people, is carving out the time.
Yeah. And it's so funny because as you started mentioning all the different categories of wellness, I started feeling like, oh my gosh, there's so many. They exist, but you don't really put a category or a name or a title to it. And as she's going through the list, I'm going, oh my gosh, I need to look into all of those.
Well, I'll give you some tips if there's one you're working on.
but it's so true as well in every aspect, because we are so different. We are each unique, as you know, our circumstances are unique as our DNA, basically. And for all of those categories, for all of those titles, really, it is so important to start looking into all of those. But then, like you say, they're all dovetailing together. They're all linking together in some way. And it's just up to you. Again, it's up to you as to what you want, what kind of that aspect or where you are now in your life, where you're not happy with what you have,
or even
or
just
with the
one
current
part
circumstance.
of any of them that you're not happy with, or all of them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Either
And
way.
swing it around and look at those kind of aspects and bring it into your life as to what you want.
Yeah.
Now, I think when we talk about the things that you don't want, there's
Yeah.
always this aspect of saying no to things that you don't want, but sometimes that's very hard for people to do.
So hard.
Um,
Yeah.
what is your kind of take on that?
So I am a very, I guess you could say a gut feeling kind of girl. So I like to think about things as how am I processing something physiologically? Because my body tells me before my brain tells me whether I like something or not. And somebody asked me the other day, well, how do you know the difference between anxiety and intuition? Which I think is a really good question. So I answered it as anxiety to me feels like somebody just punched me in the face or punched me like in the gut, right? Like I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe, fear, all of those other pieces. And intuition to me feels like that little nagging thing in your gut feeling where you're like, or the little voice that's telling you like, maybe you might want to consider, or maybe have you thought about. And so I think there's a fine line for each person to like discern which one is which. And if something's anxiety or fear provoking, say no. That is not what you want. If you're questioning it more than 2 or 3 times in your head, it's probably anxiety. And so let that go. I think I've heard a lot of really good podcasts and tips that just say, okay, thank that feeling. Like, thank you for bringing me the physiological understanding that maybe this is not something I want. And I'm going to let that go because that's not helpful for me to hold on to as a feeling. But I'm going to make the decision to say no right now. And I'm going to be happy about that no, because that may open a door for something later that I didn't know was possible. And if I were following this anxiety down a rabbit hole, I won't be able to say yes to the thing that's supposed to come later. And so I think you just have to trust yourself and trust your instinct. And sometimes, you really just have to tell people who are asking you for the thing that you want to say no to, just thank them and say, you know what, right now I can't commit to that. I have all these other things that are going on, and you don't even really need to explain. You could just say, I have all these other things going on and I just can't do it right now. Now, sometimes if you want to do it later, you can offer that space and say, come back to me in 6 months, it might change. If you don't, you can also say, I can't do it right now and I'm just not interested. And that's completely okay. You have to give yourself the okay to do that. And I think as women, especially, it's hard for us to say no. We are taught to say like yes and be people pleasers. So it's difficult when you have to make that decision, and you just have to know yourself and stick behind it. Just trust your gut and say, this is where I'm going. That's it.
There's 2 things I want to mention here. The first one is obviously, like you're saying, how do you differentiate between anxiety and following that sixth sense, basically? I think that is one thing actually that I want to mention here because of my students. So many of them come to me, and if they're going through certain topics or certain stages in their life, and they're going, maybe I should do this, or I should do this, or I should do this. And particularly if they're making a very distinct decision as to where they want to go, what is the next pivoting point in their business.
Yes.
And then when they go through and they talk it through, you can kind of almost see their faces. You can kind of see where they kind of get that anxiety moment where they're talking about this one kind of point, and they go, but I'm not quite sure if this is for me. It's on the table, but I'm not quite sure. But you can see their expression on their face, that anxiety is there, and they feel that they're not connected with it. And then they go through the other topics where their eyes just lit up, and they go, so maybe I'm thinking this is what I should do, and this is in the direction I should go. And in so many senses, they answer that for themselves. But it is so true in what you're saying. By what they're doing is they are kind of automatically, without knowing it, distinguishing between anxiety and that kind of, that sixth sense that is telling them this is the direction you need to go for. I've seen this so many times when I talk with my students. I don't know if you've experienced something similar, but I just wanted to mention that
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something you mentioned earlier also is super important in distinguishing that where do you want to go, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a vision for yourself and your business and what you're trying to create, it's important to keep that as your true north. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs say this, like, what is your true north? What's your purpose? So
Yeah.
who are you making this for? What is their need? You know, all of those questions. And sometimes you just get so mired down in that thought that you forget really what your purpose was when you started down this path. And it's all about your passion. You know, these things that we're creating as creators are all about your passions. And so I think as you're going through those kinds of anxiety points, sometimes it's helpful to also just take a moment or have someone like you who's questioning, like, why, when, where, how, you know, to be able to discern, is this something that really gets me closer to my passion, to my true north, to my vision? And if it is, even if it's a little bit anxiety provoking because you're outside of the space that's comfortable, that could be okay, right? Like that point might be good for growth. But if it's so anxiety provoking and you just feel like I can't get it done and I don't want to dedicate the resources and I just might feel icky after I do it, then don't do it, right? And so I think you all have to kind of know yourself to be able to discern all of those things. And sometimes people honestly are just not that self-aware. And that takes practice, you know, that takes thought, it takes meditation, it takes a lot of different things. And so if somebody is not at that self-awareness point to be able to discern, I would say take a step backwards before making the decision and even just check in with, is my heart racing? Is my brain racing? Am I having repetitive negative thoughts? Am I dreaming about it? And some of those physiological aspects will actually tell you whether or not it's anxiety or your sixth sense.
Yeah. No, it's so true in more ways than one. And then the second thing that I want to mention there, when it comes to saying no, forgive me if I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there's a very well-known person internationally who said this, and I got it from him. He said, for everything that you say yes to, there's something else that you're going to say no to.
Yeah, I know that quote. I'm trying to think of.
I know. And as you were talking,
we'll
I was like,
damn, it'll be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. I was just thinking, damn, who is he? Anyway, it'll come back to me. But it was just so true as well, because, you know, if you keep on saying yes to things, number one, you are going to start panicking and getting overwhelmed. You're going to have too much to do, and you're not going to be the best version of yourself because you're not going to put full focus on where you want to go and what you want to do. So if opportunities, and let me rephrase this, I get this question so many times when I always say, when opportunities arise, don't say no to them the first time, because they might never come back. You know, it's an opportunity. Once you say no, you might never have that opportunity again. But whenever opportunity arises and you say yes to it, at least you've got your foot in the door to analyze that opportunity and see, is this really something that is going to help me reach my goal? And then before you say yes to that opportunity, think about what you have already in line, because once you say yes to something, you're going to have to say no to something else, because now you're going to have to make space now in order not to overwhelm yourself, but to take a hold of this opportunity and to kind of let that, you know, help you and direct you in whatever journey it's taking you, so to speak. So yes, when it comes to getting opportunities, say yes to it, analyze it, decide if that opportunity is right for you, if it's aligned with your goal. And then once you say, or before you say yes, decide then what else are you going to say no to. And that's something that has helped me tremendously. That just that one sentence has helped me tremendously to kind of figure out, you know, how not to be busy and overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah. And I think there's some really good pieces in there. I'm going to like highlight the nuggets of what you said.
Please
I think there's really, so one of the things is, you know, always keeping the door open, right? And I think that that is something that's really important. When you're working on your well-being, sometimes you don't want to just close doors, because then you're actually focusing on negative space. And you really want to focus on additive, positive space, bringing things, attracting things into your life. And so that was one thing. Yes, absolutely. If you cannot say yes without the person, if you can't get that extra information without the person confirming you like hardcore, but you still are wanting to assess it, sometimes you can just say, can you tell me more about, and then ask them for the particular details you're worried about. Can you tell me more about the cost? Can you tell me more about the timeline? Can you tell me more about this thing that I'd have to trade off in order to do that thing. And so, or even just tell them what was, can you tell me more about your experience and why you want me, of all people, to do this thing? And sometimes those extra questions before you say yes will give you the information that you need to make the decision later. And so I found that sometimes if I'm not immediately comfortable with something and it's not an absolute yes from the get-go, I start asking questions back of the person. And a lot of the time people get taken aback. They're like, why is she asking me these things? If they can't answer my question straight up, or they seem like they're lying, I'm done. If there is no yes. There's no preliminary yes there, because I have to get the right vibe from you, from the questions that I ask you back, in order to proceed. And for me, it's all about if I'm comfortable with you as a person. I think you operate the same way. That's how we connected. Yes. So, I think in what you're saying, there's also other tactics that people can use to still not close the door, but also not hard commit to something when they're not ready, right? And so I think you have like a lot of pieces of that. And I'm sure people who do your coaching also have you help them develop those kinds of key questions that they should be asking. And so I think that's another important thing about coaching, right? Like I've worked with health coaches, I've worked, like I said, with therapists, I've worked with well-being coaches, like I've worked with actual physical trainers, all these different types of coaching, and each of them has their niche and their importance in your life. And so if you're ever thinking about, should I invest in a coaching model for something that I'm struggling with, I'm a big proponent of that, because it gives you the perspective from someone else about the thing that you're struggling with, or the way to advance in the thing that you really want, right? And so I think it's a great investment for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, maybe I'm going to kick myself for saying this, but I'm just being very honest and transparent here. Every time that I've coached somebody, they always go at the end going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is fantastic. I didn't know this about myself, or I never thought about things like this, which is really lovely to hear. But the actual truth is, every single one of us has got all the answers we need right within ourselves. It just, all it is it requires somebody like yourself, like me, to stand in front of them and ask them the right questions where they go, oh, and then the answer appears. And they go like, it's like magic. It's like something I've never thought about. Well, you've had the answer the whole time.
You did think about it.
You did think about it. But we just, in some senses, as human beings, we're just so lazy to dig deep and really go and find the answers. And sometimes we don't even know what to dig for. And that's where us as coaches come forward asking the questions, and they go, open up doors.
I think of coaching almost like a mentor in some ways. Sometimes for some people, especially when you're working on different aspects of wellness and your career, like this, what you do is more, I would consider occupational wellness, just so you have your name for where your niche is. And that is like, you want the coach to be the person in your corner, right? Like you want that person who's rooting for you, who knows your history, who can tell you when you've been successful, because they're seeing it from the outside. And sometimes it's not so much that they didn't have the answer, because if you're saying they have the answer, but sometimes they don't have the confidence to move forward because they don't have somebody who believes in them. Yeah. Maybe their family or other people are like, why are you doing this entrepreneur thing? You're going to be poor, or you're like staying up till midnight every night. What are you doing? Get some sleep. And so when you have so many people naysaying you start to hear that and believe it and internalize it. And that's what having a coach or a mentor or a support system does for you, is to really help you take a step back and realize, oh no, I'm totally winning right now. And I have somebody who's super cheerleading me on, I should keep going. And I think that's the part that's super important, that when you're investing that time to work with a coach or a mentor or anybody like that, you're automatically going to get that support. And if you're getting it nowhere else, it's meaningful when you get it from that one person.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've seen it time and time again, just my students, when they excel at their best, when I'm going, keep going, you're on fire, keep going, you're doing the right thing. And just that, I see them excel. And sometimes some of them has even excelled far beyond me at certain aspects. And that's, and then you're
amazing. Still cheering for them, though.
I
that's
know,
the thing. Like, you're like, you're going beyond where I'm capable of going right now, but hey, that's great. I'm excited for you. And I think that's wonderful.
Oh, it warms up my heart. It's one of these things I feel like it's so excited about just sharing. But that's very much all to do with the wellness. It's with the mental well-being, the social well-being, because let's face it, when you have a coach, or when you have somebody, a mentor in your vicinity, in your space, in your energy field, you're sharing that with that person, and having somebody there in that social field with you, and trusting them and working with them, it's so, so important. So wellness is absolutely key. Now, the other thing I want to touch up on a little bit is obviously, for busy entrepreneurs, the one thing that stresses everybody out all the time is that they struggle to prioritize.
Yeah, the to-do list.
I know, the to-do list and Post-it notes. I mean, I've got loads of them right here all over my computer screen.
Oh yeah,
it looks like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, there's a list everywhere.
Honestly, my whole screen looks like a Christmas tree. But those to-do lists and those kind of things that overwhelm us so much on a daily basis, because prioritizing is something that is really hard. We're not all born with it. It's something you've got to learn. It's a skill really that you've got to implement in your business. But why don't you talk to us about prioritizing and wellness, you know, as a whole kind of strategy really together?
Yeah. So, I mean, the to-do list is a mile long, right? Especially when you're running your own website and you've got your podcast or you've got all these other things that you're trying to do. And what I try to do first is actually, I'm on top. So my well-being and what I need at the moment is priority over all the other things, because the other things are almost on an arbitrary timeline that I have set in my head. And I have to remember that if I have an email sequence I want to decide to get out by Tuesday, is anybody going to notice if it comes out by Thursday? Probably not. I mean, I know my subscribers love me and they want to hear my, you know, crazy stories and see all my pictures. But at the same time, you know, if it's not a time limited resource that I'm sharing with them, Tuesday versus Thursday is not going to make much of a difference if I have a cold, right? If I'm feeling down, under the weather, or even just mentally down, if I'm drained, if I don't have enough sleep, if I haven't even showered because I've been sitting on my couch typing away for hours, you know, there's a lot of things that I was doing pretty particularly on when I was building my website that just had me up till like 1 a.m. because I couldn't figure out this one tech thing, and I'm Googling and I'm watching YouTube and I'm looking at all these different websites. And that phase was really difficult for everyone around me. They were just like, what is going on with you? Not only have we not heard from you, when we do hear from you, your hair is not done, your makeup is not done, you're all disheveled looking, and you sound like I don't even know who you are. And so I had to take a step back. Actually, after I launched my website, I put content out for a month, and then I had a traumatic life event and I did nothing for a month. And that was absolutely okay with me because I had to be priority number one. The way I described it to people was, I cannot write about wellness, I can't promote wellness to other people if I'm not feeling well.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a good rule for folks. Is like, hey, the priority always has to be yourself. If you are not feeling well, how are you going to be a benefit to everybody else who is looking to you for inspiration? And so that, to me, priority number one has to be you. Beyond that, I look at things like, hey, I always tell every boss I ever had, do you want it done right or do you want it done right now? Because a lot of the time when I'm rushing through something, it is not done right. I don't have the buy-in. I don't have the right resources. The research is shoddy. The formatting is all over the place. I might have a typo in there. And so I try to think of it that way. If the quality is going to suffer because I'm rushing to do it, I need to set a more realistic timeline, or tell myself that the right way to do it is what I need to do. And I need to take the time to do it the right way. And so a lot of the time I'll say, okay, me first, tasks that I know I can do, low-hanging fruit. I can do them with quality. I can do them fast. I can outsource them to somebody else and come back to it later, or I could calendar and schedule it out, but not do it right now. Those things I get out of the way super fast. Okay, done. And then the next things that I do are really the complex tasks that really need my attention. And if it's something that I have to dig deep, say, I don't really know the content very well, I have to do a fair amount of research, I'll give myself an appropriate timeline for those to say, okay, research is going to take me a couple of days. And sometimes for me, especially being creative and putting out content, thinking about the research that I've done is going to take a few days, right? So it might mean that that blog post that I really want to get out on Friday isn't going to come out till the following Friday. And that has to be the timeline that I'm working on. And I have to not lower my expectations, but set my expectations appropriately. And I think this is where, as entrepreneurs, we're always like, expectations are up here for ourselves. You know, we can do everything. We're superwoman, we're supermen. And that may be true. However, if that's going to cause your well-being to suffer, you shouldn't push that hard, right? And so the other thing about that is sleep. I think a lot of people are really
Yes.
sleep deprived in this arena. I talk to people who are like, yeah, those late night hours are going to pay off one day. You're going to have your 6-figure blog and it's going to be great. And it's like, okay, maybe, but if I can't get to tomorrow because I'm on 3 hours of sleep and I've got to go to my 9 to 5 and they're noticing that I can't get there on time and I'm going to lose my job and my steady paycheck, that's not worth it, right? So I think the other thing about that is making sure that on your to-do list is rest. If you're having some sort of, mental blockage, take the time to sit and meditate. Go to your yoga mat, get your meditation pillow out, meditate for an hour, take a nap after, and then come back to the thing. You will be so surprised how much mental clarity you'll have once you've rested your brain, because your brain is not designed to be on go mode all the time. It just physiologically is not. And so when you're thinking about that, if you're keeping your mental receptors constantly firing, eventually that firing speed is going to slow down. And so you have to slow it down before it gets to slow on its own in order to catch back up to the speed you want to be at.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. As you're talking, you know what? I have to tell the story.
Oh yeah.
Yesterday, I had a very bad day. I was all coldy and fluey, and I had 4 podcast recordings scheduled. Woo! I had a very busy morning, getting a lot of stuff done, on social media, getting all my scheduling done. So I woke up as usual, 7 o'clock in the morning, was ready, did my hour of meditation, loved it, enjoyed it, and sat in front of my computer, and all of a sudden my voice was all croaky. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my voice. I've got these 3 podcasts scheduled, and you just don't feel right. Your energy is low. Everything is just not right. And I thought, okay, I've got to make a decision now. I've got to prioritize. So what I did is I emailed the 3 ladies whom I had the podcast with and said, I'm so sorry. My voice is disappearing. I'm all croaky. We're going to have to reschedule the podcast recording. And I've never rescheduled podcast recordings before because I was always fine. But just this one day, it just didn't work out. But then in addition, I was looking at creating content for my social calendars in the future and having them scheduled. And my brain capacity was just not there. My energy levels just wasn't there at that moment in time. So I made a decision and thought, okay, I'm going to prioritize myself today. I'm going to take the rest of the day off. I'll do some emails here and there, but then I'm going to take a book. I'm going to crawl into bed and I'm just going to read until I fall asleep. And I've never done that before. And I was so proud of myself. I had a great rest. And today I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. My energy levels are back up. I can do all the podcast recordings like we're doing now. And I'm in the right state of mind to do this. But if I would have had to pressurize myself to go through those 3 recordings, I don't think they would have been the best podcast recordings. And I would have done the women who actually took the time to come onto that podcast, I would have done them a disservice because my energy wouldn't have been able to meet up with them. So that is just my example of how I experienced as you're talking through it.
Let's tease that apart though, because I think this is important in what you're saying for people to reinforce those decisions that you made, right? So first of all, you thought, can I do it right or can I do it right or can I do it right now? Right? That's a big decision point that you had to make. And then you had to give yourself space to say no, right? And so you started out your day of meditation, which I was like, hallelujah, thank you for bringing that in.
That was a great part of my day.
yeah, that's always the best part. Are you able to do it in the morning or the evening? It doesn't really matter if you can do it. I'm a big fan of walking meditation, all of the things. And so, giving yourself space to say no was important because you then were able to say, okay, I know I can redo these podcasts later. I know I have to get this low-hanging fruit out of the way, the emails, the posts, those things are something I can still do with half brain capacity. And then I'm going to switch that out and say yes for an activity that I know will promote my well-being over time. Laying down with a good book and just zoning out, resting. And the thing that did was supercharge you for today, right? And so I think as people are thinking about how this well-being thing works, all of those points of decisions are super important every day. And that's a little bit where we get overwhelmed is because you just want to do this cycle that you already set up. You already want your to-do list and your calendar to keep going the way you had it. But sometimes you have to stop yourself and give yourself the space to say no to yourself, which is also difficult, right? And so proud of you for having taken that perspective because
I'm glad I can use myself as an example because also I think in so many ways it just shows the audience as well, Every entrepreneur, every female entrepreneur, every business owner, we're all human. We've got our up days, we've got our down days, no matter what those down days are. But it's up to you as how you kind of prioritize that and make it work for you, and think of your wellness at the end of the day, especially specifically when you're getting overwhelmed with things, you know, and you feel the anxiety is building up and those kind of things. That's where you need to stand back and think about your own wellness and take it all in.
So, I mean, I think when you're just doing all these things, going to-do list, and you're just a busy entrepreneur, if you're wanting to work from, you know, wherever in the world, and I do have a friend right now who's working from Thailand, and it's like amazing. And the one thing I can take from her example is that she's still doing all of the important types of activities that you would do in that space as a tourist, right? So she's still working, she's still booking clients, she's still doing meetings while she's there, and still coming to places in high heels and dressing up. But at the same time, then you'll see her the next day and she's in a hammock enjoying her life. And so I think that that is one of the important things about this, is some of us, you know, who are not in Thailand being a digital nomad, are here in our lovely homes, you know, doing all of this stuff. And it can really feel like you're just going and going and going, and you never get to relax. And so some things I like to do, for example, is go for a walk with my dog. She keeps me super motivated to hang out and just relax and do everything I need to do. But at the same time, I also like to camp. I like to take weekends away, and I'll take my computer with me, and I'll take, if I'm camping and I don't have electricity, I'll take charged all of my video cameras and all of my things with extra batteries. And I'm still creating content. So I still feel like I'm getting pictures and video and stock footage and B-roll and all the things I need to put digitally out, but I'm doing it while I'm working on my wellness, right? And my wellness is important, more important at that point than the content that I'm creating. And so I've tried to find ways to put them both together. That way I'm not overwhelming myself, but then also I'm also making sure that as I'm doing those things, the content I'm creating still has a wellness vibe to it. It still has me doing yoga outside, or me hiking or something like that. So it's still consistent with my brand. And so I think that if there's a way for your audience to make those kinds of decisions as they're creating their content, that's what you really want to hit, is that sweet spot of like both of them together.
Yeah. The way I see it is, once you're in that kind of situation, like you say, when you're going camping and you're relaxing, that's sometimes as well where you can bring your best self forward. So when you do your kind of like your little video chat or things like that, that's sometimes where you just light up as well, because you're so relaxed at that moment in time, and your brain is much more relaxed. So the information could just flow easier, etc. So it's one of those things, like you said, everybody, and particularly for those in the audience, you just got to decide, how do you bring wellness and also your work together in order to make sure that there's a balance?
Yeah, and I think that sometimes we're also not thinking about that environmental wellness piece. And so I just want to touch on that one, because that one's one of the more difficult ones for people, and community wellness. And I think as you're out in the space, you know, of the different types of communities you're involved in, it's sometimes helpful for you even to just understand that the entrepreneur world is a community. I mean, a lot of us are related in a niche on our own, and there's people we interact with on Facebook or in different groups, and those communities keep us in that supercharged mode, and they keep us creative. And so if you're someone who's just getting into this and you haven't joined those communities, go to the conference, right? It seems like a super big amount of money to spend $500 that you don't have, but the amount of community and support that you'll get at that conference is really super important. I go to FinCon, and I love the FinCon community. They're great. And so, and I'm a wellness blogger. Why am I at a financial conference, right? But I'm there to get people to do content share for me on my financial wellness pieces. So there's different purposes to being part of those communities. But then you also might just want to be out in the community, like outside your door, and volunteer at your kid's school, or work with other mommy bloggers and have a coffee chat or something like that. And so those things are really important. I would definitely encourage people to try to dig into that if you haven't gotten there yet. And then the environmental wellness piece, this is again something that people, you might think like, okay, well, I recycle, so I'm like totally doing my environmental wellness, like this is what I've got it down. But I think you know, really it's also about like what's your carbon footprint? Like, do you really know, like, can you reduce that in some way? Can you take public transportation? Yes, the recycling thing, but also, are you reusing stuff around your house as well? Are you maybe selling stuff on Facebook Market or other things so that you can repurpose it rather than throwing away perfectly good objects in your home, and you might get like $5 for them, but that's not the point. The $5 is not the point. The point is that you found a really good home for it. I personally just bought a Reiki table from a woman who his mom was a masseuse and she passed away. And so I was like super happy to get this really cheap massage table that's super high quality so I can do Reiki in my home. And so I think that that's another piece to it is environmental wellness isn't always just the easy pieces as well. You have to really dig a layer deeper to see if you're working on that. And some of us just want to consume all the time. And you don't really think about like, where do our electronics go when you throw them away? Like, is there something else we can be doing with them? So those ones are definitely aspects that people forget about. And then intellectual wellness is another one. We in the entrepreneurial space know how important continual learning is, and learning from each other, and participating in like all of the different webinars and things. And so as you're kind of doing this work, always looking for places to be a learner and to continue growing in the talents that you don't naturally have, and trying to be purposeful about the resources you're looking for, that they're high quality, they're worth the money, they're worth your time, because like you said before, you're investing in that and not doing something else. And so those pieces I would encourage people to dig a little deeper in, because I think the mental wellness and the physical wellness at the surface are always where we go, right? Yeah. And the other ones kind of get like pushed to the back burner or forgotten, or you don't even know about them.
Yeah.
So
it's true. Like I said in the beginning, when you mentioned that whole list, it was like, those kind of things I didn't even think about.
Yeah. And sometimes people put like intellectual wellness and occupational wellness together. So I would like tease those apart and I do tease them apart in my model, because I think the intellectual wellness is also something students really are striving for. And so if you think of that as being like your continual learner, continual perpetual student mode, that's your intellectual wellness. Occupational wellness is that vision that we were talking about earlier. Like, where are you going with this whole thing? Where are you going with your energy and your time? And what's going to be fulfilling to you? And how can you incrementally work towards feeling fulfilled with the thing that's bringing you money? Yeah. And that could be your 9-to-5. That could be your entrepreneurial side hustles. It could be any of those things, but you have to always keep striving to move forward in that. And so don't just take your ho-hum job and go there every day and be miserable. What's the next step? Can you go and take a class? Can you go to a trade school and pick up another skill, something that'll make you more marketable? Can you update your LinkedIn? Can you update your resume? Can you send your resume to somebody to review and give you feedback? So when you do go look for a job, you may not be ready right now, you'll actually have a resume available. Can you get yourself on a couple of recruiters' lists so that when they have jobs, they're coming to you instead of you seeking out them? So I think that there's all these different pieces to it. And people wouldn't say like, getting on a recruiter's list is part of my wellness. Like that would never connect to people, but it is. And it's helping you advance in some aspect of your life that might be stuck.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I think in so many ways, for those who's listening, who is now in the 9-to-5 and you're thinking about starting a business. Yes, but it's so true, because when you're thinking about starting a business, and maybe some of you have already started a business and it's running along the sideline, but like you mentioned, you said you had a friend who was in a toxic working environment, but she was just hustling through because she was holding on to that paycheck, and that's she needed that. But now she kind of thinks that she's got this exit strategy where if she's working on a business on the sideline, it's going to help her. The problem that I find, again, with the mental wellness is once you're in a toxic environment, 9-to-5 job, your energy is so depleted. So now when you try and come home in the evenings, you're trying to work on your side hustle in order to have that as your exit strategy so you can quit your job and go into your business full time, you can't give your energy that you don't have anymore to your business and try and work on that. So there are so many options. You don't have to be stuck in a toxic environment. Just the examples that you've given now, update your CV, go and find another job. And some people would say, well, it's easier for you to say. But
no, I mean, it took me 2 years to find something that I really liked. And I think that, one of the things that kept me going that whole time in an environment that I wasn't excited about in my 9-to-5 was teaching spin, right? I have and it literally pays me like not much money for each hour that I'm there. And I spend more money on my Spotify and my Apple Music subscriptions that I make in that class. But what that keeps me as part of a different work environment that was not toxic and where people were uber supportive. And I was also able to get benefits there that I didn't have in my 9 to 5. So for example, I get 40% off of personal training. So of course I'm going to buy personal training at my gym. That's going to propel my physical wellness. And that's a perk that I didn't have if I didn't work there, right?
Yeah.
But then having a supportive environment and a supportive manager there offsets other things in my 9 to 5.
Yes.
And so I think that you could even pick up a side hustle at the place that you really like. Or if you like walking dogs, go do one of these mobile app dog walkers. The dogs will definitely improve your mental health. So you could still even work on your financial wellness and your occupational wellness and still be happier than you would be in your 9 to 5. But you're going to like need to trade off that time, right? It's going to have to be still after hours. And so, you know, it's up to you to think about, well, what do I like? And even though I'm hustling on this entrepreneurial journey, maybe I can bring in a couple of, you know, dollars doing this other thing that I naturally have a propensity to, and I really enjoy, but it's not going to be that I'm getting all my joy from my 9 to 5.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I just wanted to bring it forward, because I think it's so important for the audience also to understand that if you are in a 9 to 5 at the moment that is bringing you down, it is toxic, it doesn't feel that it's right for you, like Wendie is saying, just go and find something where you can offset that energy and have the support and have the right energy to balance off what you're not getting from your 9 to 5. And then over time, things are going to start, opportunities are going to start presenting itself. We spoke about that earlier. Opportunities are going to start presenting themselves. Doors are going to start opening up for you, and might even be, you know, doors to other jobs that you never would have thought possible.
Absolutely.
So it's all about you, where you are at the moment, what your well-being is, what you don't want and what you do want. And then it's up to you to make that distinctive decision and saying, right, now I know what I want and this is where I'm heading. You don't have to stay stuck in an environment where you're completely draining, or you are draining your own energy, because obviously, you know, when it comes to the mental health wellness, that plays a big part in it. But you've got still a decision. That's the most important part. You've got a decision and you can make that decision.
And we should take a minute also to call out something you just talked about. And I'm going to say it in a different way than you did, but it's really important that people hear it in this way. Mental wellness is something that we all have, right? We've been stuck in this deficit medical model to thinking about mental illness for so long that we don't understand that we all have a mental health aspect to our being, right? And whatever way you want to say it, negative or positive mental health exists for each of us. And so each of us is going to cycle through depression and anxiety, and really those are normal feelings. Those, just like joy and sadness and happy and grief and all of those things are normal. Do you remember those like little magnets on your fridge where you could move here is how I'm feeling today, and you could like put this on the face?
I've seen those.
Do you remember those?
Yes,
Oh, maybe it's an American thing. I don't know. We have.
No, I've seen them in America.
yeah, exactly. Maybe it's an American thing, but it really helps you think about your own mental health in that way. Am I feeling confused today, or am I feeling anxious today, or am I excited today? Those are real feelings, and so I think one of the things about mental well-being is that we always think about it as just this or that, and it's not. We cycle through our mental health all day, every day. And so, and sometimes the cycles are longer, right? And so I think for people to think about it this way, mental health becomes a mental health problem when it's preventing you from doing something. So when it's preventing you from living a normal, healthy life, interacting in a normal way, or contributing to your business or your occupation in a normal way, that's when it's time to seek help. And there are a variety of ways to do that. And there is no shame in seeking help. And so I think that the more we can normalize that aspect and help people understand that all this other wellness stuff we've been talking about is what promotes positive mental health. And so the more we do all these other things, your positive mental health bank will get built up, and you'll see less and less time that you're cycling through these negative aspects of mental well-being. And so that part is extremely important for entrepreneurs, because we get so stuck in this like anxiety, and then we don't see our things selling, or we don't see our movement and our whatever numbers going up. And then we start getting depressed and get into this slump. And that tends to slow your mojo. You know, that's like slowing you down from what you're trying to do. And so really working on some of this other stuff and putting your time into the positive aspects will mitigate the amount of time you're spending in the negative. And so I would definitely encourage people to think about this in a really open way, not a this or that, but a cycle. And the fact that, you know, when it gets to that point where you need help, just ask for it. You can find help of a variety of different levels, and it will be available to you. But you need to put that pride away and just go and ask for the help.
Make the decision. It's either a yes or a no. And I'm hoping it's a yes. I'm hoping you're saying to yourself,
yeah.
yes, I'm going to make the decision and go for it.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wendie, thank you so much. This has been phenomenal having you on here. I'm so excited to share everything here today with the audience. And I'm sure some of them has really taken some great tips away. I appreciate you as a friend as well.
I know.
For everything that you've said here and shared here with us today. And yeah, really, really just so thankful for, you know, you with your level of expertise, sharing all your knowledge as well. But yeah, what we're going to do, obviously, Wendie's got a fantastic freebie available for you guys here today. It's a 7 days of wellness checklist. Wendie, why don't you just tell us about the checklist and what they can get from it?
So anyone who joins my email list gets this checklist automatically. It's my way of sort of indoctrinating people into a regular schedule of working with their wellness. And so it's really easy to operate. It's a Google Doc. So it's just, it's actually not a doc, I think it's a Google Sheet. And so you're able to download it or you can print it. And it just gives you a box that says, this is the activity that I'm going to work on. And this is the dimension of wellness that it falls under. So if anybody's confused about the dimensions of wellness, they can hop over to my website. It tells you all the different dimensions and what falls in them. So you're not confused about what to put in the boxes. And you can just download that to your phone or you can print it out. I encourage people to just keep it somewhere with them throughout the week. And you'll make 7 decisions. So it's only 7 things, but you'll work on one thing one day. So I'll give you an example. The week that I created it, I decided that I was going to eat beets that week because that is packed with vitamins. It's a food I don't really like as an adult. I've been trying to incorporate more foods that I didn't like as a kid. And so one of the things I scheduled was time to eat beets. And it might seem kind of like, well, that's kind of odd, but it's something that I didn't like to do. And so I encourage people in the 7 days of wellness to fill it with things that you normally would do or that you like to do. That way you can call out what your wellness recipe is on a regular basis. And then infuse for maybe 2 of those days something that you've never done before or that you actually don't like to do, so that you're able to sort of stretch yourself in your wellness space into a slightly different routine, right? Yeah. And so that's what the freebie is all about. It comes with a set of emails to help you kind of stay motivated and, you know, get you through those 7 days, and I kind of check on you. And so that way, you know, people are able to use the resource, but also have some inspiration on how to use the resource. And of course, everybody's welcome to get in contact with me on social media or through my website. And I'm happy to also encourage you in different ways. If you have any questions about, you know, well, what kind of activity could I do for XYZ part of wellness? I'm happy to give you examples and things like that. So Amazing. You're not alone with this checklist.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Wendie. And what we'll do is the link to the freebie for the checklist will be below in my show notes. So please, by all means, go down there and get it now. And then Wendie's website will also be there. So by all means, get in touch with Wendie if you've got any questions with what we've discussed today. If you feel you need a little bit of guidance, definitely get in touch with Wendie. She's the girl, and you know, you've seen her now, you've met her, you can feel her energy. She will obviously motivate you in more ways than one. Wendie, thank you again for everything. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be in touch fairly soon again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to share Wellness Grind with you, and I'm excited to share it with your audience.